Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Avanti Wellness Podcast, hosted by me, Lydia Smith, aka Butterflydia. I'm embarking on my own transformational journey, and my intention is to inspire, inform, and support you all along the way. My hope is that we are all learning something new with each episode. So let's meet today's guest. Hi, everybody. This is Lydia. And today I have a special guest that I just recently met. I'm sitting here with Kate Arredondo. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Lydia.
How you doing?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. So I like to start off my podcast by telling the audience how I know or don't know my guest. And today, I have a guest that I've never met before, other than just a brief phone call. And we met through a speakers networking group. So she's out there, she's written a book, and she's out there just trying to spread some good information out there in the world. And I wanted to have her on the podcast as a guest so she could tell all of our audience what it is that she's doing out there and tell her story. So thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Lydia. And, once I came across this podcast and the message you want to serve, I perfectly lined up with, it's like, this is exactly what I'm hoping to get out in the world too. So it was definitely just great to know there's others out there trying to serve the world in the same kind of way, same message.
Absolutely. And so that message that she's referring to is the message that my podcast has, which is connecting the body, mind, and spirit with the option of, creating your wellness. But we're going to speak about it today as it relates to more of a mental health, or if anyone's suffering from mental illness, how Kate, in her story that she's going to share with us in a second after she introduces herself, has found, stability and resources and alternative means than what the traditional pathway has been. And she wants other people to know that it's possible because it's worked for her. So I really love her message. So Kate, would you take a second and, share with everybody a little background about yourself so that we feel like we know who we're listening to and talking with today?
Yeah. Of course. So I think for me, I am a mental wellness coach. That's kind of a path that I found over the last, 5 or 6 years now. I've done corporate accounting, and I guess my story starts, I'll go back to growing up. I had a very normal childhood and was blessed to be adopted by my parents, who allowed me to just have a life I would have never had I not been adopted. And so I had a very, stable upbringing, and went to a private school when I was young. But towards middle school, my parents really felt like it would better serve me to be in a bigger school, like public school, and have access to athletics. I was a very athletic child and interested in that kind of stuff. And so they moved me from this private school where it was like 13 of us, and we all were very diverse in our cultures and our backgrounds, and just all the best of friends, right, to this big public middle school with 350 kids in my grade, and predominantly, like 99.9% middle to upper class, white students. And so it was a big kind of shock to me, because I kind of been in my bubble, right? And I wasn't aware of the different things, that the different cliques and things that were cool or not cool. And it caught me off guard. And I just remember that the first grade and sixth grade, it was, I came home crying every day. And I remember that. I don't remember a lot about the details, but it was a huge adjustment for me. And I think that's where my mental health journey really started. But I was able to kind of find myself in that environment once I really got into athletics and started really excelling in that and connecting with people on my team and really figuring out like, okay, this is what I'm good at. Like, I fit into this part of the grade or,
this
set
group
of friends. Yeah, this group and whatnot. And then learning. And obviously, when you're in middle school, it's such a tumultuous time of learning about yourself and other people and whatnot. And so I started finding my own, right? And it continued through high school. But then I had several injuries that kind of happened one after the other. I was huge into basketball, ran track, did cross country, but basketball was definitely my thing. And those injuries stopped me from being able to kind of be the basketball player that I thought I was always going to be. And looking back, I now know it had kind of was the catalyst for what triggered my mental illness. So I am type 2 bipolar, and I went through many, many years during high school and then after high school of just going through not really knowing what was going on with me. I guess I should say I was misdiagnosed and put on several different medications. And so it was a very difficult time for me and especially for my family, and no one really understood, right, what was going on. But I was fortunate enough to have a mother who had a background. She was a medical doctor, not in psychiatry, but had enough wherewithal to continue to push and help me find the resources, and ended up finding a doctor that was able to diagnose me correctly, get me on some medication, and get me towards that stability. But, it wasn't just all roses after that point.
Wait, can I just ask a question? Tell us what age this was that you got your, what you felt like was the right diagnosis.
It was when I was around 20, 19, 20. And looking back, it all kind of started when I was about 16, 17.
Can you, and before you go any further, for anyone who doesn't even understand what we're talking about, can you just explain what type 2 bipolar is, so people understand what you're talking about?
Yeah. So bipolar disorder, it's a mood disorder, and there's two different types depending on the type of mood you're predominantly in. So people may know it as manic depressive disorder as well. So with type 1 bipolar, you tend to have a lot of periods of time where you're manic. So high energy, like can't focus, thoughts, happening all the time, reckless behavior, usually a lot of substance abuse. Unfortunately, you kind of lose your ability to like rationalize and have boundaries around things. So you're kind of more reckless in how you behave, and it can have like the anxiety and whatnot, with lower, less frequent periods of depression. Versus type 2, which is very long, deeper periods of depression with more tend to be shorter periods of that manic phase, maybe not as severe. And of course, there's different subsets, but those are the primary two, type 1 and type 2. There's rapid cycling and things like that. But they've kind of defined it between type 1 and type 2 with just other subsets.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Disorder. Yeah. And so in finding the doctor and finding the medication, I found some stability. I had actually dropped out of college, not once, but twice at that point. I, despite my injuries, had been given a scholarship in basketball, but found myself not wanting to do it once I got to the university, and ended up leaving that university after the orientation week. And so I got stable, got back into college. Everything seemed like, okay, it's all fixed, right? Everything's golden. I'm fine. It was just, I related it to like, it's just a phase sort of thing. And I also didn't like the state that my medication kind of made me feel. It made me feel kind of like a zombie. I was very tired all the time, just felt drugged. And
not feeling like you have feeling, like you can feel your feelings.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're kind of just checked out, going through the motions. It's just a certain numbness, I guess you could say. And so my doctor had asked if I wanted to kind of switch medications, thinking maybe a newer generation drug might help with those feelings. And so I started a new one, and it wasn't working. It wasn't as effective, but I didn't tell anyone that. And then I decided I didn't like it. I was fine. I was starting to basically get into the manic phase of my illness. And I stopped taking medication, didn't tell anyone. And within a matter of weeks, I just fell into this deep, dark depression. And it got to the point I stopped going to classes, doing my schoolwork, all of that, before I told anyone about it. And it really set me on an almost year-long journey of the deepest, darkest part of my illness. And it put me in a position where just a lot of things happened. And I got to the point that my doctor felt like there really wasn't anything else that she could do to help serve me other than hospitalize me and go through like some electric shock therapy or different things to get me out of that depression.
They still do that? They still do electric shock therapy?
I guess given this was almost 15 years ago. So I'm not sure currently, but at the time it was definitely.
Was it small shocks or did it hurt you?
Well, she gave me the choice. So she gave me the choice. She goes, I feel like I'm at the point where I need to hospitalize you, or I feel like we should go back on the medication that we knew worked, right, and was helpful, and kind of see where that goes. Because she goes, I'm telling you, going in and being hospitalized is going to be an experience in its own. And, I don't want to have to do it unless, you feel like that's what you need. But she goes, but I think that if we get you back on the medication we knew that worked, we could actually get you better again. And she gave me the choice. And so I took the afternoon to think about it and spoke with like my mother and my support system. And, I decided, okay, I'm going to give it a try, and I'm going to raise my hand if I need to. And I decided to go back on the medication and not be hospitalized. Just because I felt.
So you never did the electric? You never did the electric?
No.
Were you scared of that? I mean, that sounds scary, because what if they turn up the dial too much?
And at that point I was so young, and then you think like, oh my gosh, like being hospitalized, and all the things that you think about that. And, like not being able to leave, not being able, like you're there until you're better sort of thing. And that was just like, oh, wow. It was a big kind of wake up moment for me. And so then the medication ended up working again, and I found some balance and stability. And it was several months of getting out of that kind of deep, dark hole. But it took me about 2 weeks to start really feeling like something's happening, like things are getting better, starting to see the light in my experiences. And then I was able to kind of be managed on medication for many, many years. And so I graduated from college, got, my corporate job, my real job, right, as they say, got married and started like checking the boxes, right, that everyone thinks that you should do in life, or society tells you should do. And just getting to the point where looking back, I was just going through the motions, right? I wouldn't say that I was like fully present, but just in this space of I'm medicated, I'm stable. We would touch different medications depending on if I felt more depressed. And so I was on 3 or 4 different medications. And then over time, tapered those down to where I was able to just be on the one mood stabilizer, and even being able to taper that down to a lower dose. And so then came the time, me and my husband, we'd gone back and forth of kids, no kids. It's a big thing for me because with my mental illness, I knew there was the chance I could pass it down, not to mention the stress that comes with being a parent and the changes and all of it. Right. And so,
yeah, the responsibility.
Right. And I didn't, should we rock the boat? I've been stable. I'm going to have to get off my medications. I know it can cause some congenital issues with the fetus. And so went in, me and my husband, and kind of shared what we were thinking and our desire to have a family. And she's like, I totally think you can do it, Kate. You've been stable. I think you now have the understanding of when to ask for help and when you're at a certain point. And I know you'll raise your hand. And not to mention pregnancy brings hormones that really will do anything it can to protect the baby. And she goes, most women tend to do well during pregnancy without the medication management because hormones are in place and the body is just naturally going to
takes over.
It takes over. Yeah. And she said, and that would even continue into breastfeeding if I chose to do that. And so, she's like, obviously we'll have to taper off. You can't just stop drugs like that without tapering off, without some repercussions. And so over 6 months, I took my dose and slowly but surely tapered it down. And only my husband knew that I was in that process. And so once I did get to the point where I was off the medications and it was safe for us to try and conceive, I was able to very quickly, fortunately. And then once I shared the news that I was pregnant, my immediate family was shocked because well, what about you? Medications, what about, and it's, once they learned that I had been on this journey for 6 months, they were like, we had no idea, you've been fine. And it's I know, it was very exciting for me. And I maintained my stability without medications during pregnancy, ended up being able to, I exclusively pumped for my daughter. She didn't take to breastfeeding.
But it was breast milk.
I was breast milk. Yeah. And I was able to do that actually for 13 months successfully. And I still maintained stability despite the stress that comes in the beginning, sleepless night, first time parents, all the things. But I ended up where one day I was driving to work and I don't remember the series of thoughts that triggered me, but I ended up having a massive panic attack one morning. And then I called my mom because she is one of 2 people that is able to kind of talk me down whenever I was having some kind of panic attack, anxiety attack or whatever, and help me rationalize. Right. And after I kind of moved through the panic attack, it was the awareness of, hey, I really don't have a plan. I've, weaned off breastfeeding without a plan of what happens next, right? I don't have these hormones.
Yeah.
Anymore.
So were you kind of panicking oh my gosh, it might come back on me, the depression?
It wasn't even me thinking about the mental illness. For me, it was more of a purpose, an inner purpose thing. I remember thinking I'm on my way to this job that I just don't feel serves me anymore. And, but I had found more of a purpose in being a mother and being, I was content in my marriage and loved being a mother, but just felt like something was off in my professional life. And that was kind of the theme around it. And so in talking with my doctor after that panic attack, I told her I don't want to go back on medications. I feel like I'm feeling who I am for the first really
you
the
had
first
more
time. Yeah. And I don't know if I'm ready for that again. And she shockingly was like, well, there are other things we can try, and kind of see how it goes. And we may need to end up back on medication, and we may need to do just small doses of medication. But would you be open to doing these things that would kind of help you be able to better manage the moods, your emotions, your mind, really? And she introduced me to meditation.
Okay, so you've just told your story, and
Right.
now you're letting us know some of the practices that help with your daily stability.
Yeah. And well, for me, the introduction to it was like the first time for me, like being introduced to alternative therapies, I guess I should say, or more holistic therapies in medicine. And so I started listening to podcasts because I was like, I really don't know anything about mindfulness. I don't know anything about meditation. And she'd given me an app that she felt would be helpful to start learning about meditation, and kind of told me, like, start with 5 minutes a day. And then over time, like,
what was the app? Let everybody know.
Yeah. So I still use it, Insight Timer. It's one of the free apps that are available now still for meditation. And I loved it because it not only gave me guided meditations, but it gives you the option to do, like, pick how you want to meditate. Like if you just want some ambient music, and you can set a timer. So for me, it was great because I could have all these guided meditations, and they were teachers that had, you hear the names with like Tara Brach and people like that, who really have been doing meditation for a long time. So I was really like given professionals to teach me how to meditate. And not only was it meditation, they also did talks about the practice of meditation and mindfulness. But the podcast that I listened to that kind of introduced me more in depth to the science behind it is called Untangle. And she just had guests on that were from all different kinds of backgrounds, like more spiritual, more scientific, and really hearing like all sides of it. It just made sense. And I just craved more. I wanted more. And so I kind of went on that journey. And my book really picks up at when I had my panic attack in the car, and kind of the last 6 years of my life, from panic attack to the end of last year, really. And just like the journey that I went on from the panic attack to now, and coming to the conclusion of, for me, stability without medication means I have to have this combination of mind, body, and spirit balance, and incorporate that in my day. And I struggled because I'm like, is it really that simple? And I still believe that medication serves people with mental illness, and talk therapy. And, I also went through cognitive behavioral therapy, and those things, I don't think I would have gotten to the place that I could do the work I did now had I not had those things to help me be stable. So it's just been a long process to get to where I'm at.
Well, so other than meditation, it's funny that meditation and medication are like so closely.
That's true.
That's interesting. What were some of the other things that you do on a daily basis to help with your stability?
Yeah. So it also incorporated me finding plant-based eating. I talk about in the book, really, we did a 90-day weight loss challenge at work. And I just kind of had the idea like, oh, you know what? I'm going to try a plant-based diet. My dad had been put on it for health reasons. And I'd seen how it really had revolutionized himself and his body, and helped him stay in a heart healthy place, to not need more surgeries. And I'm like, let me try it. And I ended up losing 40 pounds and feeling the best I'd ever felt physically, but also mentally. that was the big thing. Like I just felt whole and healthy and complete really for the first time, like physically and mentally. So I found plant-based eating. I got back into running. I had fallen out of that during my struggles with mental health, and really like being able to even be okay with the fact that walking was actually like exercising. I found yoga as a part of, learning more about different ways to, to practice meditation or mindfulness. And then I started feeling kind of more spiritually connected than I had really ever before. I'd grown up going to church and being involved in, religion, but I had always never kind of felt connected to it. And so then I kind of discovered more of like this, like that you can be a very spiritual person, doesn't mean you have to be a religious person. And that was really eye-opening to me. And I think going through coach certification helped me understand what spirituality kind of meant, and really understanding like that kind of connection that I'd never been introduced to or felt connected with in religion. And so I started doing, I've done I do like card readings for myself. And, that was something that was introduced to me. And my first thought when someone talked to me about it was like, oh my gosh, isn't that like evil, like connecting with evil spirits or whatnot? And really learning, like relearning things that I kind of been brought up thinking, and just really coaching in general. But it was also like the self-awareness that comes with understanding meditation and mindfulness, and understanding how the brain really works scientifically. And that like the fact that, our brains are wired a certain way, and it served us for thousands of years, right? It kept us safe and protected us. But here we are in this modernized world, and that's not necessarily our reality anymore, but our brains haven't caught up to that. And so once I understood how the brain worked and why it does what it did, then I was able to stop and really have more of an understanding of, okay, so this is happening but I can do things that will help me build my awareness and like stop it before it spirals into anxious thoughts or makes me kind of enter a depressive period. And it's not to say that through the last 6 years of not being medicated, that it's been this, like, I've been stable the whole time. It's great, rah. It hasn't, but it's been different because I've been able to create the space. Like I went through a depression the first part of 2021, and it was totally different.
Excuse me, but who didn't go through
right, depression? Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right. You're starting to recognize that maybe you're not so unique, that maybe these are also life situations that, certain things you experience in life. Everyone's going to be depressed. If you lose a loved one, or you break up with a divorce, or a child, has trouble in school, like these are normal things people can be sad about.
Right. And
just not constantly labeling yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's because I'm this.
Right. And it's funny you say that, because earlier this morning I was in an MBSR program, and that's mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's an 8-week program that I wanted to do because I had done some research for my book, and I learned the effects that it can have on the brain, as well as, with your understanding of meditation and mindfulness. And she quoted John Kabat-Zinn as saying, we can't stop the waves like in life, but we can learn to surf them. And that was like, oh my gosh, it's so true. Like there's always going to be waves in life. We grow up thinking, like, oh, life is supposed to be great and happy all the time. And maybe be sad a little bit. But then once you kind of experience it, you learn like it's just the constant, like, ebb and flow in life. And the sooner you accept that, the easier it is to move through life.
I love that.
Yeah. And I also, before today, I also thought of my mental health, like before I had the awareness and the understanding and the practices. I was on like the most crazy roller coaster at the theme park, right? With the ups and downs and the loop-de-loops, and you're just kind of like, but you never could get off of it, sort of thing. To wanting to like get on the kiddie coaster at the theme park. Like, you're still going to have the ups and downs, but it's not going to be these things that kind of throw you and scare you and just more, I relate to be like being more violent. It's just kind of like, they're still there, but you experience it differently, I guess I should say.
Yeah. I want to share my analogy as you're talking that came to mind, my visualization. Because I've had my own mental challenges and traumas that I've dealt with in my life. And I had serious depression and, thoughts of suicide and wanting to end it. So you have to learn how to navigate. So as you're talking about surfing, I'm imagining like when you're in the beginning and you're young and you don't understand what's going on, it's you floating in the ocean of the waves by yourself. And then as you get resources, someone throws you the life preserver and now you have a little bit of assistance. And then you learn more resources and you get into a little rowboat with some very low level control, but you have some level of control and now you're not treading water. So you're a little bit more, level stable, but then another bigger boat comes along and you get to hop in that and that has an engine and you're like, whoa, this is better than the rowboat. And then like where you're at, you're on a major Royal Caribbean cruise ship at this point because you don't even feel the waves.
Right.
Sometimes. And even when there are waves, you're still able to use your mind as a way of going to the spa on the Royal Caribbean cruise ship and having a massage instead of experiencing the waves at the level of you would when you were just floating buoyant in the ocean.
Right. Yeah.
So there's just like all these different levels where you just kind of graduate to and you learn how to navigate life, and it's, wouldn't you also say it's a choice?
Right.
Like that's something that I've learned is that, and I spoke about this the other day on one of my episodes, is that happiness or sadness in a lot of cases is a mind decision. Correct. So you can spiral, when you learn that you can control how you choose to spend the energy in your mind to thinking about things, if you choose to focus on, you will get a lot of that. If you choose to focus on the good, the joys, the things that are positive in your life, that's how you shift yourself out of the depression. And I've just learned that through my own experiences and studies as well. Do you know Joe Dispenza?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I thought you would because of the things you were saying.
Yeah, I was introduced to his book actually the end of last year, like Breaking the Habit of Being You, I think was the title of that one. And it really was like just in the beginning when he talks about the studies of people who actually like did the finger exercises versus the people that thought through doing the finger exercises and how they had growth just like the people physically practicing it. It made so much sense to me, I guess I should say, because it is so true. Like it's the understanding of how powerful the mind is and understanding that there's the mind and there's the brain and they're separate. You don't have to like let the monkey brain, as a lot of people refer to it, control everything. You have the power to be like, hold on, stop. I don't want to go down that path right now, and redirect. And that just comes like the awareness, the maturity, the growth, and really understanding yourself and how to, a lot of people are like, well, it's a chemical imbalance. It's never going away. And it's like, yes, but you can do things that then trigger counter chemicals in your brain that then allow you to change how you're feeling. There's
and
science
remember, it's a offsetting. It's it's an imbalance. Mm-hmm. And so what you're saying, I just want to help the audience think about this. It's called an imbalance in the brain. when you do the more positive stuff, you bring that positive to the level of the heightened negative side. And now you have balance. Right. So it doesn't mean it went away. It may not have. And if you need to think that it never goes away, fine. But take what you're saying is, and what your book's about, I'm assuming, is taking all the action that increase that positive side of this balance that's considered the imbalance of your life. Yeah. And so I wanted to ask you, and we've got about 10 more minutes. Wanted to ask you about, do you believe that certain chemicals in our diet that we actually think are okay actually affect? So I'm going to give you an example. I saw that movie again recently. I just wanted to watch it again because somebody was dealing with dementia. And I remembered that they said aspartame was a big contributor to like dementia and Alzheimer's, but also mental illness. I've heard that too. I was curious if you've ever come to that realization or experience like drinking sodas or something with diet, low sugar things.
I've never been like a diet, like soda drinker. I've heard that with aspartame, but I certainly believe it, especially like the part of my book where I talk about like the body and for me, the plant-based diet. I found a lot of research of people talking about really how much the gut plays in the part of your brain health. And they talk about the gut actually being the second brain of the body. And so the more you put in nourishing food, and they're not advocating cutting out all meat, cutting out whatever, but the more you eat whole plant-based foods in your diet, the more you give your gut the different type of nutrients and, that biome, right, that then help create the chemicals in the brain. And they talk about like, it creates more of a balance that then helps the brain create those things. And so the gut is really like, they talk about just being as important as the brain in kind of controlling the body per se. And so I completely believe it. I think there's so much more that will probably end up coming out now that more of a plant-based diet or kind of moving away from the traditional American diet is becoming more known in America.
Yeah, like how harmful it is.
Right. But I lived and breathed it, right? Like when I did that 90-day challenge and I was like hardcore whole food plant-based, I mean, I felt it. It was, and even my husband, who at first was like, oh, do your thing, whatever. And then he started like noticing, and then he started feeling bad, right? And so he's kind of jumped on I need to eat more whole food, plant-based stuff. And he's feeling it. And then of course I've seen it with my mom and my dad and just really understanding like, that was the big body component for me was exercise, but it also was diet. Yeah. And how
what you put in your body. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who are curious, there's a movie on, I believe it's Amazon Prime. I've seen it. It's called The Second Brain. And it's totally easy. You don't have to buy a book. You can just sit and watch an hour or two. Have you seen that movie? I
haven't. Forks Over Knives is what I watched that introduced me. But I've watched several, but I'll have to look at that. Yeah,
I think it's literally called The Second Brain. Okay. And it's all about the gut. And just to put it into context for people, I like to break things down to simplification. Think about it. Your body is constantly creating cells and, replacing cells. So even if you just imagine that what you put in your stomach, in your gut, is the building blocks of the future brain cells that are going to get replaced, then it does make sense at that very elementary level that what you put in your gut and that your gut can be your second brain. Maybe that's just the way they need to explain it, the importance of it, so that people take more of a serious attitude about putting nutritious foods that are high in antioxidants and nutrients and micronutrients and vitamins, minerals into the body, so it creates healthier cells. Okay. So in wrapping up, like, tell us how you're currently helping. So I guess that panic attack you had going to your job helped spark you onto this path that you are now of wanting to help people. Do you do this full time now? You're coaching?
Yes, I am. I am doing it full time now. And I really wanted to, for me, it was about, I wanted to help people. And I kept kind of, I got certified in coaching several years ago now. And I kept always coming back to like the mental wellness space. And really I wanted, and that was part of like wanting to write my book. I wanted to write my book for the, the last 10 plus years, because I wanted just to give hope to people again. Like, just because you've been diagnosed with a mental illness, or you've had, depression or whatever in your life, it doesn't have to define you. And that's what I also am hoping to do with speaking, right? Is getting people to realize, just because you've been labeled before, like me, with a mental illness, I had to make the decision that wasn't going to be what defined me. And so I wanted to be able to help others kind of come to that place. And to me, that means the mind, body, spirit balance. And so my focus in coaching is helping people reconnect, like, to their why, understanding like maybe what is holding them back, what they're allowing to be defined as, and then learning this more balanced approach of the mind, body, and spirit, and then how to incorporate that into their lives so that then they can feel whole again and find the success in whatever it is they've been wanting to do and live the life they want to live, but kind of felt like they've been stuck, like someone who's been going through the motions in life or just coping, and moving them to being able to thrive with it. Yeah. And so that in coaching, and also it inspired me to start an online community. And that will be coming out on Mining Networks, called Finding the Alpenglow. And I wanted that to just be a bigger space that allowed people to come in and have access to the resources that I've learned. Like, here's the talks that I've listened to that really kind of give you the science. And here's like practices, meditation practices, or breath work practices, or all the different things that you may kind of begin to explore, but also to have that community, right, of like-minded people who have been through the things that you have, had their own experience with mental health, but be able to share and have a safe space to kind of grow and help and be a part of other people's journeys like I've been on. That didn't take as long as it kind of took me to get to the place.
Right. And you didn't have the support other than that, right, your therapist or your doctor or whatever. Right. You didn't have like the community support to like feed you all these resources. So you're trying to create something. You're wanting to create something that you wish you would have had at the time. Right. And so that's
speed beautiful. It up for other people.
Just briefly, what does Alpenglow mean? Because you're creating a group called that.
Yes. So Alpenglow, and that's actually the name of my coaching practice, is Alpenglow Coaching. I am very much connected to mountains. And so when I was thinking about like what I wanted to name my coaching practice, I wanted it to be a more nature word or connection to nature, because that has been so healing for me. Yeah. And I came across Alpenglow, and it is actually kind of right before the sun rises or right after the sun sets. If you're in the mountains and you look up at the summit, or if even in the clouds, if you're outside of the mountains,
it creates that glow.
It creates a glow. It's like a pink purple kind of glow. It's not as like bright and vibrant as the actual sunrise or sunset. It's actually the reflection of it after
it's the softer version.
Yeah, the softer version on the opposite side of the sky from wherever the sun
right. And it's soothing, set. Right?
Yeah. Place. And it's kind of like, it's kind of like a new beginning, sort of, kind of, it's like the beauty behind the beauty. And I just love that word. And I had never heard it before. And it was just created such a beautiful picture to me. And so that's why I even put Alpenglow on my book. Like,
oh, that's pretty.
Yeah. Because
okay. So if anyone wants to find you or find your book or get in touch with you, where do they go to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So my website is findingthealpenglow.com, and that will kind of tell you more about me. And I have all the different ways to connect to me on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I'm under Alpenglow Coaching. And I'm also LinkedIn just under Kate Arredondo. And then my Mighty Network, that is available in a link through my website. The easiest way is to kind of go there and you can find all the different ways. So findingthealpenglow.com is really the easiest way.
Awesome. For anybody who might be a group that's seeking a speaker or looking for someone who can speak on this specific topic, I know that Kate is available for speaking opportunities too. So reach out to her at her website and you can find Kate there. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Lydia.
Appreciate you being on the podcast. And I just wish you all the best in your endeavors and your effort to help people.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking with you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We've reached the end of this episode. If you'd like to continue with this motivational journey, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss out each time we load a new episode. If you have an inspirational story to share or want to let us know about a potential guest, we'd love to hear about it. Contact us at avantiwellness.com. See you next time, and remember, change is good.